So in order to create the door, here we already have some edge loops aligned everything properly. So we just have to move it around in order to create the door. So we are going to select edge loop, these two edge loops, and use the x-axis scale option, and we're just going to scale it straight. The same thing for these two edges also. Now if I actually just move it, these two edges to the side, we actually almost have a door kind of design we have. And you can actually move around some of the edges in order to avoid any problems. Okay, now if you press 3 on the keyboard, you can see everything is actually looking fine. And once that is done, the next thing is we're going to select all 4 of these faces, and we're going to scale it in the Z axis, so everything will become straight. And you can just move it back and align with the rest of the faces. So this is our door area, and once that is done, now if you press 3 on the keyboard, it's actually perfectly fine, and we have a straight space for creating the door. Okay, the next thing is we want to make it a little bit round. So we are going to go to this vertex option, and this center vertex we are just going to select, and we are just going to move it up slightly, and these two vertex we are going to move it down slightly. So we actually have a triangle kind of alignment, and once we actually press 3 on the keyboard, it will have a rounded top. Okay, so once that is done, we are going to select the faces, these 4 faces again, and press shift right click on the keyboard, and we'll select the extrude face option. And this time also we are going to select the scale. We are going to enable the scale option. We're just going to slightly scale in the center. After that, if you want, now you can see actually top area have a more space between the edges compared to side. So you can actually scale from the side slightly, so both the top and side also will match properly. Once that is done, you can press G on the keyboard once again, and you can just slightly move it inside. So we have a door kind of design. Once that is done, if you press 3 on the keyboard, you can see the final, how the final door design is actually looking. Okay, now if you isolate that particular model, if you check in the bottom, you can see some extra faces, how that particular model is actually designed, everything is aligned properly. And if you press 3 on the keyboard now, you can see how the model is actually created. So the one more thing is you can add extra edge loop in order to preserve that shape of our door properly. So what you can do is, if you want, you can just select edge loop, and you can actually add an edge loop near towards that corner. And if you press 3 on the keyboard now itself, you can see that model, it's actually preserving that design which we created for the door itself. So this is one of the option. The second option is, you can actually, we are going to look at one more tool which is called bevel edges. So that we are going to use it, and I'm going to show you how to use that particular tool. So what you can do is, you can select the edges in this corner, like double clicking. So both of the edges are selected, and after that, once the edges are selected, you can press shift right click on the keyboard, and you can see an option called bevel edges. And if you enable that option, you can see it's actually divided that particular edge into two different edge loops. So and you have a separate panel here for editing that also. The first one is fraction. That is the difference, like distance between those two created edges. You can make it more. The maximum value is 1 and the minimum value is 0. So you can adjust that value in order to keep it where you want. For now I'm going to keep it 0.05, so it will be really close. Maybe 0.03 it will be okay. And the second one is you can add segments in between. In between these created like separated edges, you can add as many edges as you want to make it more and more. We can preserve the that detail much more effectively. So that is one more option. For now we are actually going to keep the segment it at 1 itself. Once that is done, if you go to the object mode and if you press 3 on the keyboard, it's actually having the same effect as the edge loop. So this is these both are two different ways to in order to create keep the details. Okay, so once that is done, we are going to look at the bevel tool once more. So now you can see once I smooth that particular model in the top area and all, we are actually losing a lot of the depth. So in order to avoid that, what you can do is we are going to use the bevel tool on these corners. So I am going to double click this particular corner and it will select all the edge loops till here, and I am going to double click until I selected that entire loop. You can press shift while double clicking each of that edge loops, and once you feel that everything is selected, all the loop is selected properly, now you can just shift right click on the keyboard and you can select the bevel edge option. So now since we actually selected the entire loop, we actually didn't create any endgons here. Everything is actually have only 4 sides, everything is actually rectangles. After that you can adjust the fraction to make it much more closer together. For example, I'll keep it 0.03. So it will be aligned much more closer, maybe 0.04. Okay, much more closer together. So we will be able to preserve that corner much more effectively. And if you press 3 on the keyboard now, you can see that inside area is actually preserved much more properly, and we are actually able to see the door much more properly. And we can actually follow the same thing on this outside edge also. We're going to double click everything, and once you feel that everything is selected properly, again you can use the bevel edge tool, and this time instead of keeping a really narrow kind of bevel, we are just going to keep it 0.3 or something like that, so it will have a space in between. And once you selected 3, you can see now that shape is actually keeping that detail much more properly and everything is aligned properly. So once you feel everything is fine, you can just re-enable all the rest of the models. I'll just move it slightly up. And one more thing is now you can see that door, most of the door is actually below that ground, so you can just move it up, and if you want to extend that bottom area, you can just select double click the entire edge and you can just extrude it once more, and you can just move it down a little bit. So you just created an extra edge also, and you can actually see the door everything much more properly here also. After that you can align it according to your need, how you want that model to be aligned properly. Okay, once that is done, now we actually completed our first mushroom house model. So after that, if you want, you can actually align them much more closely, and you can scale them or something like that, and you can make much more changes whatever you want in between. And for now we are actually going to stop right here, and in the next video we'll move on and create the rest of the models one by one. So I'll see you guys in the next video.